What's the dumbest thing an ex said to win you back? Story 1. After telling me she didn't love me, leaving the kids with a friend whilst I was at work so she could go get drunk with her male friend. Getting drunk whilst throwing my son a birthday party and texting her male friend whilst locking herself in her bedroom and letting the other parents run the party for her. I was at work. The final straw came when she told me I wasn't invited to a party her brother was throwing, so I had to stay home to watch the kids. She had left herself logged onto social media, so her sexual messages to her male friend were pinging up every minute or so until he told her the taxi was outside. I changed the locks that night and packed her clothes and put them outside her mom's house when she came home. She was screaming and throwing bricks at the house, so I told her if she didn't leave, I'd call the police. Drum, roll please. But you can't just turn off 10 years of marriage. You must still love me. Story 2. I broke up with a guy in senior year of high school. 2 weeks later, he called me to tell me that he thought we should break up since he had refused to allow me to break up with him earlier, despite the fact that I said I was done. He said that if I came to my senses, he'd consider taking me back. I told him that was never going to happen, but wished him luck. The fun epilogue of this story comes 2 years after that. I logged into AIM to chat with my college best friend, and lo and behold, he logged on. I said hi and asked how he was doing. He said he had a fiancé, but that there was an issue and asked for a favor. I asked what it was because I was curious. He asked for a picture of my feet. When I asked why, he explained that the only way he could get off was by picturing me coming home from a long day of work on my feet and making him clean my sweaty feet with his tongue. If he could see my feet, he was pretty sure he could get over it. I asked if he'd tried role-playing with his fiancée, since it was almost certainly the power dynamic he liked and not specifically me, especially since he and I never did anything remotely like that. He said that they'd tried, but it didn't work, and it was my feet, or he couldn't get hard. He then asked if I'd be willing to boss around him and the woman he was going to marry so that he could maybe from with her. I logged off of AIM and have never logged in again. Story 3. Can you remind me why we broke up? I crashed my motorcycle and was in a coma for a week. I have memory loss and can't remember much from the past year. I don't remember breaking up. Things seemed so good. Why did they end? Unbeknownst to him, I was close with one of his friends at that time. None of that ever happened. It was all a complete lie to get me to take pity on him and talk to him. I'm still not sure how he planned on making that one work. He was emotionally abusive when we were together. Apparently, he thought he could still manipulate me. Story 4. My new girlfriend is terrible. I miss you a lot. Like I sometimes regret leaving you. You are so much better than her. Just so you know, I'm going to dump her soon, after we go on vacation, because I'm using her miles to buy my ticket. There are so many things wrong with that, and the vacation was 2 months away. I told him he had made decisions, so I didn't feel bad for the fact he missed me and never spoke to him again. My ex-husband did this to me. I didn't realize how much I was going to miss you. You understand me better. I call her your name all the time. We were so good together. 1 month before the divorce was final, after he left me to move in with his pregnant GF, I just started laughing at him. I couldn't stop. He got mad and left. Again. Story 5. Not so much to win me back, but it's a funny story nonetheless. I had an on-again, off-again, sort of volatile relationship in high school and my first semester in college. We were both young and stupid. Stuff happens. Anyway, we both had a brief period where we had broken up and were dating other people. We get back together and several days later she's got Dave, not his real name, carved into her forearm with a razor. She admits she's cheating on me with him. Final straw for me, so I walk. Fast forward 20 years. We're both married and have families. I've run into her occasionally over the years and said hello and exchanged pleasantries. She sends me a Facebook request and I accept. For a couple of years, we exchange the usual happy birthday and Merry Christmas, wall posts and such, but nothing more than that. One evening, my doorbell rings. Keep in mind, this is now 23 or 24 years after we broke up, and it's her. She's bawling. I'm very puzzled by the whole thing, and she finally tells me that she just got word that Dave, who she hasn't seen in 15 plus years, died of a drug overdose. I told her to get off my freaking porch. Story 6. Backstory. Had a somewhat long-distance relationship, 4-hour drive, so I would visit on weekends. Her ex was caught for possession and was somehow given work release from jail. It was weird, not going to lie, but he only went to serve time on weekends. I didn't find out right away, but he moved back in with her. When I finally caught her, she said, "He stays here during the week and has his own room, no bed in the said room." I tell her I'm leaving her. "You can't. You need me, and you're nothing without me. If you leave, I'll tell your chain of command. You hit me. In the military, they take that very seriously, and you're guilty until proven innocent." I never laid a hand on her, but was afraid of all the trouble I'd have to deal with until everything would get dropped. So I stayed for a few more months. Worst time of my life. Story 7. Finally broke up with him after 3 years. His big gesture to get me back, an email about how he couldn't live without me, ended as follows. "I get now that you're not a whore. That's why I treated you the way I did. I thought you were a whore, but now I see you're not. Wow. Be still, my beating heart. And people say that romance is dead." Story 8. I had to pull over my car because she was threatening to jump out of the passenger door. When I finally pull over on the side of the road, we are about a mile from her place when she starts marching down the road. I have a bunch of stuff in my trunk because I picked her up from practice that afternoon, and she says, "If you don't take me back, then I'm going to tell my parents that you me," and then continues marching towards her place with tears down her face. I broke up with her that night because she stole my car, punched my best friend in the face, hit on my other friend, and then talked badly of my parents. Yikes. Story 9. My ex fell out of love with me over 6 months and I tried to get us back on track. However, he decided to end it. I was extremely heartbroken. Until I learned during those 6 months he used me sexually, was emotionally cold on purpose, and made fun of me around his friends for trying too hard, as well as my anxiety and depression. At that point, we had been together for over 2 years. Finding that out made it extremely harder to deal with because why would you with someone like that? I entered a relationship 2 months afterwards with a really great guy who had always been there for me and didn't expect anything from me at all. After we started dating for a week, he messaged me and said, "I regret breaking up with you," and wanted to get back together. Story 10. He broke up with me by sort of ghosting me after 2 years together. He wouldn't show up when we had plans, then text me later and apologize and say sweet things, but go on to ignore my calls for a week. He set his status to single on Facebook, so I figured it was done and deleted him. Almost a year later, he sent me a text saying he was sorry, that he was willing to talk and answer any questions I had, and that he regretted what he did because I was the second best girlfriend he'd ever had. I kid you not. I told him I didn't need his answers and didn't want to be his friend. He never bothered me after that. My ex ghosted me too. He was that guy that would make you feel all special, that never communicated unless it was on his term. He stopped talking to me for about 6 months. After he first 2 weeks, I just stopped caring. 6 months later, he calls me asking to go on a date. I'm just like, "You have the wrong number, sorry." Story 11. Broke up with douchebag ex while in Mexico with my mom. My mom. He said I cheated on him and told me my dad to get away from my spoiled princess ways. He spent the next 6 hours calling me and my mom trying to win me back. Roaming charges were disgusting, so we didn't answer or read the texts. Way too expensive. Finally, my mom got pissed and answered the phone. He was breathing heavy. My mom asked what he wanted. He said, "I just want to talk to her. You have to let me talk." My mom said, "Fine, talk." He said, "All Sarah had to do was..." And then my mom hung up because she didn't want to hear more about what I did wrong. After reading over 100 texts about what I did wrong, how awful I was, how much he misses me, the girl he slept with, the lies he told me, the apologies for the lies, the endless litany of how he'll change, etc., etc. I turned off my phone and didn't turn it on until the next morning. That morning I had almost 100 missed calls and 18 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Screw you, Ken. Story 12. If we break up, it's just a matter of time before you ask for your laptop back, and I use it for school, so I'm going to have to drop out and my kids are going to be raised in poverty. Do you really want that on your conscience? Edit. I lent him my extra laptop before I realized he bleeds all the women in his life dry of all their resources. I wasn't about to let him keep it after the crap he put me through. I got my laptop back when we broke up, and he destroyed the power cord and messed up the laptop to the point that it wouldn't run. I fixed it, but lesson learned. Darn, that's some fine crazy logic right there. Story 13. I'm just kidding. We are not really broken up. Me. What the hell? No, sorry, that's not how this works. She broke up with me over the phone, during which I tried to rationalize why, how, what went wrong, etc. I talked with her for a good 30 minutes at least, but she was content on saying, "Sorry, it's over." I rationalized and accepted and was ready to move on. Heart tender obviously, since the relationship was real for me at the time. At this point is when she said, "Just kidding, we are not really broken up. I was just testing you to see if you would fight for the relationship." I about lost my freaking mind. No, that's not how any of this works. I hate to break it to you, but your plan backfired. We really are broken up, because you do not test me like this. Not like this. Reminds me of my first serious boyfriend. I told him I was ending it, and he just smiled and said no. Took me a couple days to convince him I actually meant yes. Story 14. He decided to make a grand gesture for my birthday, which was about 6 months after the breakup. He had a cake made in the shape of Australia. He had it shipped to me in a locked steamer trunk. Keys in the card. All of this was based off of a line from Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. She may cry, but her tears will dry when I hand her the keys to a shiny new Australia. This is after I found out that I was the other woman and I had started to date someone else. It was just painfully awkward. Side note, the cake was dry. Story 15. Texted me lyrics to Earth Angel after months of ignoring me after dumping me via text, asking me to take him back, and when I replied asking him what happened to the girls he cheated on me with, he got defensive and told me that he hopes the next guy can put me back together because I'm a wreck beyond repair. He was a pretty cocky bastard, and thanks to that, I put myself back together, gave myself some time, and eventually found someone who truly loved me. For me, best revenge is being happy. Story 16. But once you'd proved yourself to me, and I realized I could trust you, I stopped cheating on you. When we got together, he was still sleeping with his ex. He thought everyone cheated, because he did. So after 4 months, he realized I hadn't and wasn't going to cheat on him. He graciously decided to stop putting his in other women. His logic was astounding. Story 17. She cheated. I said so long, get out of my house. She did. Moved in with this guy. She showed up a few weeks later with her cat and some belongings and said she made a mistake, wants me back because she needs me to take care of her. Sorry, what? You're trying to move in while cheating on me and simultaneously asking me to pamper you? Yeah. This is the part where you silently nod, grab the cat, then shut the door and lock it. Proceed to sip whiskey neat while petting your new cat. Story 18. Calls me 6 months after our breakup at 11 p.m. on a weeknight when I had classes the next day. College. She tells me, remember that tree at the peak of American Fork Canyon that we carved our names into? Yeah? I'm gonna drive up there right now to see it if you want to go with me. Why would I want to take a 2-hour drive up the canyon in the middle of the night? Also, I have school tomorrow. Okay. This was after she ended our 3-year relationship to go be with some white trash bad boy named David that she somehow knew from before I met her. He had gone to prison for stealing semi-trucks and just got out a month or two before she ran off with him. I spent about a month acting like a pathetic moron, texting and calling her, begging for her to take me back. To be fair, it was my first real relationship, and the thought of losing her was unbearable at the time, because I was an idiot. 6 months had been plenty of time to move on, though. Thank God she waited that long to crawl back so I could use my brain and say no thanks. Never heard from her again, though I did see her in the newspaper about 2 years later. Apparently her, David, her twin brother Brad, and some other chick all got arrested for counterfeiting money and trying to use it at a local Wendy's. They even used plain printer paper and a cheap inkjet printer to do it. I like to imagine them up and suddenly feeling like geniuses when they figured out how to line it up and print on both sides of the paper. Story 19. First, she tried to buy me stuff, then wanted to be friend with benefits, then pulled the pregnancy card, then threatening to have her boys jump me. 3,000 text in 2 days wasn't enough for a restraining order. We also only dated for about 3 weeks. 1,500 text per day, 63 text per hour. That's more than 1 text a minute, assuming she didn't sleep for the whole time. That's impressive. I bet her thumbs were tired by the end of that. Story 20. I managed to find and date the craziest girl I've ever heard of. And it didn't go well. When I first tried to break up with her, she just kept saying no until I gave in. She said no for more than 10 minutes. The second time I tried to break up with her, she pulled the same trick. But this time, ready for it, I beat her at her own game and said yes in response. When I got bored of this back and forth, I said, well, it's a yes, so I'm sorry. Goodbye. She then messaged my brother and sister-in-law, whom she had never met, telling them that I needed to call her back right away because she was unstable and didn't know what she was capable of. When my brother told me that, I told him to ignore her. She continued to message them saying everything from she was pregnant to she deserves better, she deserves me. After 24 hours of relentlessly contacting my family, a family of 7 total, I turned my phone back on and saw I had 150 texts and 19 voicemails from her. As an aside, this is where I learned an iMessage can only be so long when it exceeds the maximum character count you have to press on the message, and it is opened up on the Notes app. When I called her back, she immediately started yelling at me, saying things like, "How dare I? Who do you think you are? She deserves better." I told her I would hang up and block her everywhere I could if she didn't stop yelling at me. I called to have a conversation about why I wanted to break up with her so she could get some closure. She calmed down, and in the coolest tone I've ever heard her speak, she told me that she would tell her dad that I was physically and verbally abusive to her if I didn't get back together with her. Her dad was not a particularly big or scary guy, but he works with my dad where I also work, and it would have been a career ender for me if they had believed her. I decided to roll the dice and tell her that her dad knows she has mental issues and there is no way he would believe her. I knew her dad before I knew her, so I was 25% confident he would take my side. She did have mental issues. For whatever reason, she believed me and went back to crying and yelling at me. I said goodbye. Please don't contact me again. After 6 more months of repeated attempts to contact me, I found out she got engaged to some poor guy. I don't know how, who, why, or when it happened, but I was happy it was finally over for me. Unfortunately, I was wrong. She will still follow and unfollow my girlfriend and her dog's Instagram account, as well as like and unlike 2-plus-year-old pictures on their accounts. She is now married, as of a few months ago, and is still pulling this shit every once in a while. If she wasn't so messed up, or if I didn't respect her dad so much, I would have contacted the guy she married and told him. But at the end of the day, it's just not worth it. I may have handled it poorly, but she was a complete nightmare to date. She had crazy mood swings, would yell at me in front of my family and friends, was incredibly bossy, and we had nothing in common. Only a crazy person would think the relationship was going somewhere. Story 21. Him. Just talk to me and tell me why. Me. Because it's not working and I'm not happy. Him. But I've changed. It'll be different. Me. No. I've made my decision. I'm done. We are over. Him. Is there somebody else? If there is, just tell me. Just tell me who he is. Tell me who you're screwing. Me. I'm not doing this. You're acting crazy. I'm hanging up. Him. If you hang up on me, I will myself. Me. Stop this. You can't guilt me into staying on the phone. Now I've got work to do. I have to go. Him. What do you have to do? You're just standing in your living room talking to me on the phone. You don't look very busy to me. I can see you. You know, it was a long-distance relationship. He lived in a town across the state. Stalking is not flattering. It's terrifying. Story 22. Broke up with ex, yet she would still text me constantly. One day she tells me she has cancer and is in need of immediate surgery. I ask her what specifically, and she tells me she has cervical cancer. I ask for facts, and she throws some at me. What she neglected to remember was that I worked in medicine, in a surgical unit, with 2 OB-GYNs. I helped them daily preforming the exact surgery she said she needed. When she was done, I replied with a very long text detailing how everything she said wasn't factual. Never heard from her again. Story 23. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I will be on Friday. He had tried to choke me out on the kitchen floor. Block at him on everything, had my friends come help me move all my stuff out. He didn't even deserve a response. Another good one was, we're not broken up. I didn't agree to that. You don't have to agree to it for me to dump you. Story 24. I used a spoon so it wouldn't do as much damage as the scissors that were sitting there. Because I love you. Context. The day before, she had stabbed me in the stomach with a teaspoon, hard enough I had to get stitches. Final straw from a very verbally and physically abusive girlfriend. We were fighting because I just found out she screwed my best friend on my birthday, which they were too sick with flu to come out for. I busted my stitches while knocking him out the next day, so super glued the wound shut as I didn't want to explain to parents why I had to go back to the hospital. I think in this instance, my parents would have been a little bit more understanding. Story 25. He said he had slept with the girl because he was trying to prove a point that not all girls were as frigid as I was. So now that he'd proven that, maybe he could get some action from his girlfriend. We were in the 11th grade. On a separate note, he ended up marrying the girl he slept with. So that's a thing. Story 26. I once dated this guy who literally carved my name into his hand. He said he did it because he couldn't afford a tattoo, and when I broke up with him for it, he said, But your name is carved into my hand. I'm not sure if that was supposed to mean me stay, or if he at that moment realized how stupid he was. I was once friends with a guy who told me he cut my name into his leg after I told him I had no interest in being in a relationship with him. He also told me about a bunch of other self-harm and made me spend a good few nights, including a whole New Year's Eve, talking him out of suicide, or so I thought, until a mutual friend stayed the weekend at his house, got a good look at both pristine and unscarred legs and arms, and reported this back to me. Little made the whole thing up because it meant I'd spend hours telling him how much he mattered to people. He knew I was sensitive to it because my family had been extensively affected by it. If I'd had any sense at the time, I'd have called the police round to the family home for a welfare check the first time he did it. Story 27. How are you going to leave me out on the street? I'm sick and I have no money. Then, people are going to talk and think I did something wrong. Then, you're going to give me my respect? No. He should have thought about all that before he started shooting in my house. He didn't deserve respect at all. Story 28. We were meant to be together, and if we don't, then we'll alter the future and retroactively destroy the past. Neither you nor I will have ever even been born if we don't stay together. I married him. A portion of this was in our vows. Story 29. I just missed the boy I used to know, then she turned around and walked away. She later texted me, I wanted you to run after me. You obviously missed the part where this was a Nicholas Sparks story and not real life. Oh man, I dated a girl like this. She broke up with me because she wanted to get back together on her birthday. It's not a movie. Story 30. Okay. I know it was bad to dump you while you were in intensive care, but you were really bumming me out. You're a lot better now though, so it's all good. Was in and out of critical condition and had several emergency ops over the course of 5 weeks in hospital. He dumped me over the phone while I was lying in my hospital bed. After I was discharged, he waited 2 months, then tried to come back. He also never came to visit once. He said he didn't want to see me that way, as it wasn't very attractive. Told him to get lost. Story 31. My ex called me out of the blue, 5 years after breaking up. She said she decided it was time to get married, so she made a top 10 list of exes. She said the top 3 turned her down, so I was next. We've been married 10 years now. Kidding. I laughed hard and told her my girlfriend would also find that funny. Story 32. I unfortunately have a story to share. A few years ago when I was, say, 16, I was in a long-distance relationship online via a game for a few months. It was at a time when I was in full depression and several other things. But she decided to end the relationship because she had just got with this guy. She had barely even met and gave him her virginity and proceeded to block me after I told her how upset I was. Fast forward 6 months or so, she sends me a friend request, and I accept out of pure curiosity, and she says something along the lines of, my boyfriend isn't nearby, and do you want to s***? Which I then replied saying, what the hell is wrong with you? No, you're a horrible person, and I hope your BF finds out because I wouldn't wish you upon anyone, and proceeded to block her. It really screwed me up how a person could even be this way, despite several years of experience with similar people, and I do still feel sick to my stomach whenever I think back on the past and get to her. Story 33. I dated a guy in high school for about 2 months and progressively realized he was just insane. So I broke up with him and he proceeded to stalk me for a few weeks, showing up in the bushes outside of my apartment, following me to local cafes and even friends' houses. My aunt and several mutual friends told him to cut the shit, but he eventually broke into my house in the middle of the night and crawled in bed with me, cuddling me with his hand over my mouth so I wouldn't scream and wake my parents up. He begged me to take him back because he loved me so much and just couldn't possibly live without me. I turned to cuddle him back and kneed him in the balls and escorted him out. He didn't bother me again. A few months later, he went to New York and got arrested dressed as Batman in Times Square. Story 34. Broke up with him first time because he was ghosting me, and whenever we made plans he canceled at last minute. I decided to end it because he never met me halfway, but remained friends. Over the course of years, he would then randomly ask me out because a girl he liked friend-zoned him. And at first, I thought why not, but that was the second time we broke up. He kept it up and trying to be his friend, I would give him advice on girls. One day my friend and I invited him to the movies with some other friends. It started well, but then he started to talk shit about me and our old relationship. It went on the whole night. It was the last straw when he said she was bad in bed. That's why I broke up with her. I was pissed, never have slept with him. Then out loud said, it wasn't my fault that you had such a small dick. He got mad and asked, what was my deal? I told him because he was an ass the whole night, and after this, off and never talked to me again. Then a year later, met my fiancé, then boyfriend. Once I posted on Facebook he was my boyfriend. X started to text and call me about, what the hell, why him, he lives too far. What about me? I told him to off and blocked him off, Facebook and my phone. Story 35. My boyfriend went home for Christmas to be with his family for the holiday. We were living together and had just moved to Southern California from a Midwestern state. I couldn't afford to fly home as I had quit my job so he could move out there for his work. He told me that if I wanted to see my family for Christmas, I should have gotten a new job sooner. After he came back from his month of holiday vacation, I got a text message from an old friend. Yes, the tool took a month off work, but couldn't bother to spend a half a week's pay on a plane ticket for the guy who had uprooted his life for the D-bag's career. I hadn't communicated with this friend in a while, and apparently my boyfriend had told this guy that we had broken up and he was single again. The guy was pissed at being manipulated into betraying me after he saw a few weeks of my boyfriend's brunch selfies with me. So he sent me screenshots of my soon-to-be exes flirting and then arranging a hookup with him. The screenshots showed that all the while my boyfriend was very strongly hinting at wanting to date this friend. The final screenshots were the morning after texts, and they were as descriptive of the previous night's activities as they were desperate for a relationship with this guy. When confronted, the boyfriend denied sleeping with my friend, told me I was being paranoid, and accused me of probably doing the same while he was gone for a month. When I pointed out to him that I could hardly do the same if he hadn't done it and then showed him the screenshots my friend had sent of their conversation, he just kept insisting he was innocent. It took him a year to admit via text that he'd lied to me, and then he told me he was single and wanted to give it another try. I thanked him for the apology and then sent the screenshots of that conversation to the guy who kept popping up in his Facebook photos, the one he was going out to brunch with every Sunday morning. I'm happy to say that I haven't been troubled by the bastard again since. Story 36. As I was talking about divorce with my ex, he mentioned how much harder it would be to keep up with the dogs. 2 were mine, 2 were rescue dogs I was fostering. He wanted me to be scared of the responsibility. Then he joked about possibly coming by to steal the dogs after I'd made him move out. I could just open the gate and let them in my car and you wouldn't see them again. I told him not to joke about stealing my dogs, or I'd gladly go to jail for feeding his body to them. Story 37. I want us to get back together, but you have to understand that I believe that I am old-fashioned and that it is a man's job to take care of his woman. You should be the one paying for things on dates. You should take care of me the way men did in the 1950s. Okay, you understand that back in the 50s, that women were expected to stay at home and take care of the house and essentially be submissive to the man, right? I'm not interested in either side of that arrangement. I know. That's why I love you. I'm a feminist, and I love that about you. I'm a free-thinking and independent woman. I just need you to help me be independent. Story 38. We were married for 9 years with 3 kids. One day she just didn't come home. She'd moved in with her boss. I'd known something was up for a while, but at the time, I wasn't brave enough to address it. 4 months later, after any of us had barely heard from her, she called and asked for the Keurig. She wanted to pick it up when the kids weren't at home. An argument followed. I remember her insinuating that I just keep it there in case she ever comes back. I remember laughing and asking her if she thought I was holding that door open for her. She said, "You were always so polite, as if I were offering." I apologized for confusing her, hung up and made a sweet cup of Folgers hazelnut coffee.